we move on to our next speaker. Here we are. We're talking today about race to equality, achieving racial inclusion at work. I happen to think that it's not possible without this next aspect of what our speaker is going to speak about. It's called cultural intelligence. It's shortened to CQ. There's now CQ UK that you can join up to. That's headed by the wonderful Ritika Wadia. Do check them out. CQC UK. Our speaker today is someone who's walked that talk, who's actually a living embodiment of cultural intelligence. He hails from the Yemen. He's a Brummie. He's lived in Milton Keynes. He's been all over the place. How do I know so much about our next speaker? We're brothers. We are brothers by another mothers. We are joined at the hip of diversity and inclusion. I first met our next speaker at a Dods event, actually, some years ago, even before Kieran joined. We actually met. Our eyes met across a crowded room, and we've stuck together ever since. And we've been dear friends and become dearer and dearer friends. He's going to speak with us in 2 sessions, each 1 hour, with questions amongst them, with a short break in between of just 15 minutes. But the time is over to him. His name is Gamiel Yafai. He's the wonderful Gamiel Yafai, and I give way to him now. Gamiel, my brother, it's over to you.
Rob, what can I say? What a fantastic intro, and it is always fantastic working with you. I don't think I could do what I do without the moral support, guidance, and help from yourself and a whole multitude of individuals working in this space, you know, to try and create more inclusive environment for everybody to enjoy what they do more. So, as Rob said, my name's Gamiel Yafai. I'm a diversity and inclusion strategist. I've been working in this area now for 21 years, and it gets better and better. It gets harder and harder. But I would say out of those 21 years, I've spent 19 years trying to convince organizations as to why diversity, equity, and inclusion are so important. And you could say the last 2 years focusing so heavily on so what can we do and how can we do it? I'm very fortunate that I've been involved in hundreds and hundreds of different projects. I have clients all over the world. I mean, we've got fisheries in Iceland. Yes, fisheries in Iceland who are working on, creating more inclusive cultures, right through to Yo Sushi. And then we've got online fashion magazines called the Business of Fashion, top end fashion. And then we've got other organizations like Zalando, who are an online fashion retailer. And it just shows the breadth and depth of a focus on this area now and why it's so important. So I've been, apart from doing it for a short while, I've been involved in 36 pieces of research for different clients since 2002. And all of those research projects are focused on the external perceptions of different groups towards employers, and different groups, I'm talking about minority groups in terms of gender, disability, ethnicity, LGBTQ+, towards employers, but also deep diving into organizations through focus groups, looking at the realities of working for those organizations from a minority perspective. And that's how do individuals from different backgrounds experience the culture of organizations. And I'll talk more about that as we go through the 2 sessions. So we've got loads to cover off. I'm going to be doing things slightly differently today. Let me just share my slides. The question to you is, what do you think of when you hear or think of the word culture? I'll explain why this question is really important. One of the research projects we did last year, well, or was it early this year, time's flying, but was to look at the difference in terms of the understanding of the culture sector, so museums, galleries, theatres, etc. Their understanding of what culture meant and how they felt they were engaging with different minority groups. And it's just so interesting because they thought they were doing so much to engage with different minority groups. But when we went out to do research with those minority groups, hardly any of them knew what was going on within the theatres, what they were doing to engage or attract, or even their understanding of the term culture. Within the arts and heritage and creative sector, culture means, something totally different to what it means to communities. Communities take culture as being, their heritage, their background, their roots, whereas culture within the creative, the heritage sector is seen as the performances and what the performances there are. So there was a huge divide there, but it's really good to see, to see this come up. So for most of you, heritage and culture are really or heritage and background is really what culture means to you. And that's the important thing, is making sure that we have this level playing field of understanding, because when I talk about culture and I talk about the arts, the heritage sector, that's their own internal culture, which is totally, totally different from our lived and people's lived culture and experiences. So, have you ever felt uncomfortable in a new cultural setting? And that cultural setting could be anything from being part of a meeting or being within a new organization or joining a new group or going to a church or a mosque or a synagogue or an Asian women's project for the first time, or just being part of a group of people that that starts working with individuals with disabilities. So what have been your feedback? Why? So have you ever felt uncomfortable in a new cultural setting, and why? Different to the norm. I love that word, the norm. What is the norm? Who dictates the norm? Where does the norm come from? Imposter syndrome. Absolutely. Every single person on this call will suffer imposter syndrome. You will have self-limiting beliefs. And I know, because again, even though I've been doing what I do for so many years, I'm constantly having to talk to myself to actually, remind myself of the things that I've actually achieved and done, and projects that, that I've been involved with, and working locally, nationally, internationally, working with governments, and I still challenge myself. But, the fact is, I'm a believer in resilience. And for me, the term resilience is about having a battery pack. So I believe every single person has a battery pack. So we've got this automatically internal battery pack. And when we have experiences, challenges and experiences that we deal with, well, we start to top up that battery pack. And, every single challenge or negative experience that we deal with well fills our battery pack, and suddenly we just draw on that energy, that battery, to actually help us overcome those imposter syndromes, those self-limiting beliefs. So, you have all got the ability to overcome them. You just need to talk about or to think about that voice in the back of your head that says you can't. And there's a video that I'm going to show you later that will hopefully give you more of an idea of where we need to go with this. So imposter syndrome's the biggest thing that comes out. And to be honest with you, I bet most of you here won't realize that the other people on the session experience this the same way that you do. But different heritage, goes against my beliefs, not my area of expertise. You'd be amazed at what your area of expertise is. Lack of representation. Let's see, yes, only foreigner. And to be honest with you, a lot of you will be the only individual from different backgrounds in so many meetings. And that hasn't changed. So why do you think it's important to drive cultural intelligence in your organization? To educate, absolutely. And I say that, somebody asked me to do a webinar on casual racism, which I did, but my intro to the session was casual racism doesn't exist. It's either racism or it's not racism. So to educate closet racists, bring fresh ideas and perspectives, hear different experiences to inform decisions, inclusion for all, and bring people together. And please keep adding, because what we will do, and I should have mentioned this, the front. What we will do is collate all of the information that's sent through. We can do that on a spreadsheet and literally send that to you. So you will have all of this feedback as part of what we give you at the end. So educate and interrogate, so we as humanity can survive and grow together to get the best out of our workforce, enabling colleagues to bring their whole selves to work. And we'll touch on that topic shortly. So what people know, everyone is the same deep down. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very much. So just as I just wanted to get us talking and thinking about this before I went into more detail on the session. So, today we're going to be literally looking at the definitions, and again, I've given you different ideas, and really equipping yourself with some tools to think about and to use. And there's a number of tools I'll give you in this session and the next session, so that you can take away and start exploring yourself in more detail. And also we'll be looking at cultural biases and driving forward success. Cultural intelligence, working confidently in different cultures. And really that's, it's about an outsider's seemingly natural ability to interpret somebody's unfamiliar and ambiguous gestures the way that, that person, compatriots would, or people who are similar to them. So it's about going into situations and feeling really comfortable, not having to feel like you don't belong, or it's going to be a real awkward conversation. And part of that is about getting to know people. But we'll talk more about that. But as I say, culture means so many different things to so many different people. And we interpret language and words and, and different nationalities and in different ways, because everybody, this is an image of love, and love means so many different things in so many different cultures. You've got the Hindu religion where Holi is, a festival of love. It's a festival of celebration. It's celebrated with, with different colors. And, here we've got Valentine's Day. And then, just look at this marvelous costume. That is an expression of love. So Rob hinted at it earlier. So improve your cultural intelligence. And cultural intelligence is something that was coined, by a chap called Dr. David Livermore. And he gave the term CQ to cultural intelligence. And CQ, there's different aspects of CQ. So CQ drive, and that's the motivation to learn about our cultures and other cultures. And again, I emphasize that, it's about learning about our cultures as well. And CQ knowledge, which is understanding how those cultures influence what people say and do. CQ strategy, having a plan to respond to cultural differences. How do we engage? What is the best way to engage? Do we go up to somebody as soon as we meet them, and because they're a different color, go, so where are you from? Making those assumptions. This is about moving away from assumptions. And rather than, saying, where are you from? I start the conversation with, tell me about yourself. Simple. CQ action, and that's behaving in culturally sensitive ways, including handling any difficulties that arise. So those are the 4 areas that David Livermore really highlights. But I want to go into a bit more depth. So, in terms of developing cultural intelligence, so one is to understand, so what do you know about your cultural history? And Rob will know that I know lots about mine. Do you fully understand your culture and how you got the norms and values you have? And then there's experience. How often do you experience other cultures or have a different, or hear a different language? Do you hear or watch content from different cultures? It's incredible how many people I talk to now that like to watch, let's say, foreign films with subtitles. And it's just incredible how many more people are starting to do that, just to engage more. And so engage is how often do you put yourself in the same setting as individuals and, and groups from different backgrounds. When was the last time when was the last time you went to a mosque or a gurdwara or temple? Or have you ever been to a disability organization, or spoken to individuals who have autism or Asperger's? So how culturally competent are you? We'll test this out shortly. Okay, so between competent and mildly competent. And bear in mind the work that I do, I would still only put myself as mildly competent, because, humanity is so huge and so vast. And as much as I would love to think that I knew everything, I know a tiny portion of what I need to know. But the important thing is what we do about it. I want to talk about, authenticity, because, who we are as individuals and how we're able to, or how much we're able to bring our whole selves to work. And, I'm going to just explain a bit more about authenticity, because, when I talk about authenticity, people assume that it just means bringing your culture, your background, what you do at home to work, but it's not. That's only part of it. Our authentic selves is being able to perform to the best of our ability when we're in the workplace. And to me, that's about, if we go into an organization, we start in an organization, we're really pumped up. We know what we can contribute. We know what we can do. We know what we've already achieved. And then we get into this workplace and suddenly we're not allowed to be the people that we know we can be. We are not able to perform to the best of our ability because we're working for a line manager who thinks that they know best and how they've worked before is brilliant. So how could we possibly be any cleverer than they are? So they stint that growth and that awareness. So just look at this scale at the moment. And I know there aren't masses of people here, but it just shows you out of 10 people, we're looking almost at 60% of you that can't bring more than 80% of yourself, or don't feel you bring more than 80% of yourself to work. 10% can only feel that they can bring 50% of themselves. How much more can we contribute to an organization when we do bring more of ourselves to work? So why are you not able to bring more of yourselves to work? I will share you what comes up normally, and it comes up a number of times, is professionalism. I love that term because when I ask people what do they mean, they mean, well, I need to fit in. Do you need when we need to fit in, does that mean that there's a culture that we need to adapt ourselves to in order to be our true selves? So not a safe space. Important to safeguard my mental health? Absolutely. Our health is so important. Line managers' egos, no one with a similar background to me, so I feel I need to adapt. And again, we feel we need to navigate around the existing norms within organizations. Less educated, I'm going to challenge that. And, by less educated, I never went to university. I went to college when I was about 35. I've taught myself, well, not just taught myself, I've taught myself with some great role models and mentors and champions and coaches. But, less educated is one of those terms that, is in our minds, it's in the back of our minds, and we need to get rid of it because every single person here has so much more knowledge than they think they have. As a Muslim, knowing we have Islamophobes in the CS, so you may choose to not wear a hijab or grow a beard. Different personalities, so there's lots of different reasons. This image I produced for a client a while ago, and this is about being our authentic self. It's about bringing more of who we are to work, and we will explore why we don't in a moment. But this image shows that regardless of your race, your nationality, and so much more comes into this, because really, we're talking about race here, but you can't consider race without considering the intersectionality. You can't not think about a Black individual with a disability or an Asian who is gay, etc., etc. So we have to think about intersectionality. So the more of ourselves we bring to work, the better we perform, the better we feel within that organization. And understanding our own cultural background is a big part of that, and the part that we play. This slide to me is being human, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about human beings, and every single individual is different, and every single individual needs to be supported in a totally different way from others. So, we need to be mindful of that when we explore cultural intelligence. But as you'll see from this slide, the more we bring to an organization, the more that we'll see that diversity of creativity, diversity of thinking, diversity of innovation, diversity of experience, and diversity of ability. However, there are huge barriers that we need to overcome. And with those barriers, we can do it. It's not that we can't, but those barriers include, lack of cultural awareness and intelligence. We make so many assumptions about people. We think we know people, but really, we don't spend enough time getting to know them. In fact, a lot of the time, we don't know ourselves well enough in order to understand other people as well. So a big part of what we're going to be talking about shortly will be about getting to know ourselves. Also, you've got organizational cultures. And in every single organization, from all the research that we've done, it highlights you have multiple cultures, but there are two overriding cultures. The first one is that explicit culture, the norm and how things are. And it's experienced mainly by senior leaders who will see the organization as a great place to work. They will see the organization, they'll see themselves as being genuinely nice people that would never, ever discriminate on purpose. They will see annual general reports that go out, that are glowing, they only talk about the positive things. And they'll see their website, which look good and exciting, but what they don't know is they don't know the hidden and shadow cultures. Out of all of those 36 pieces of research that we've done, every single one highlights hidden and shadow cultures within organizations. And those hidden and shadow cultures are experienced by the minority groups. And you find them out when you do research or when you do webinars or when you start to ask questions and get feedback. So that's really important that we get to understand that they do exist, and they can be toxic in organizations. Other barriers include institutional, structural, systemic, racism, our unconscious biases, lack of challenge. And again, I talk to so many people who have been battered and bruised so many times that they do not want to lift their head above the parapet. And the lack of positive action. And we'll talk more about positive action in the next session. So I'm going to introduce you, if you don't already know it, this is called the bicultural competency model. And what it does is it recognizes that there are so many people who are working in the UK that are from different backgrounds and cultures, and may live one life at home in a culture, then go to work in a totally different one. Or they may have been born in a different country or to parents of migrants, but there is a dual culture or bicultural competency. So the first part of this is what, is an explicit culture. I've just explained, the explicit culture is what organizations, particularly at senior level, experience. And that's the homogenous group that think that everything's rosy for them, but they think that yes, we've got policies, we've got practices, we've got procedures, so how can we be doing anything wrong? What they don't realize is those policies, practices, procedures aren't conducive to the needs of everybody. And the shadow and hidden cultures, how things really happen in your organization. Whether there'll be less golf at the moment. However, there's different networks, there's different opportunities to actually, engage and gather information. But those hidden and shadow cultures of what people normally experience in the workplace who are from a minority background. And it doesn't matter what level you are. I normally find when I'm talking to mid-managers who are from ethnic minority backgrounds, I normally find that there is a level within their organization at which they face the glass ceiling. and they know that they can't go much further. And they feel that even the language is totally different at a higher level. So what are your experiences of the hidden and shadow cultures in your organization? By the way, the slide that I showed earlier that asked you how authentic, how you show up in terms of authenticity in the workplace. We've just done a number of training programs for an organization with 800 people, and 50% of that 800 felt that they couldn't bring more than 60% of themselves to work. We showed those slides to their senior leadership team, who were horrified and had no idea of any form of hidden or shadow culture that existed in their organization. And again, data, information, feedback, research is key to moving this forward. So favoritism, nepotism, we'll find that in every single organization. It shouldn't happen, but it still does. Male-female roles, ageism, progression being blocked by senior managers, issues being swept under the rug, bonuses being paid to senior managers only, meetings arranged on my non-working day, or if you're working part-time and you're only working mornings, they'll be in the afternoons, group meetings outside of work and are not always inclusive. With more people, you'll see so many other examples. We've got 8, 9 here, but from a small audience, but you'll find so many other reasons. So bicultural competency. So we've looked at the internal culture, that experienced by senior leaders, the hidden and shadow culture. We all have our own cultures as well. And I'm very privileged. I got the opportunity to write a book called Yemen Proud, which literally, made me explore my own culture, my own ancestry, going back 2,000 years to Yemen, and how Yemen had been in a strategic position that the Americans, the Chinese, the Indians, the Russians, and every other country in the world wanted to dominate and are still trying to now. But yeah, so I've written a book called Yemen Proud, one giving me an idea of who I am, where I come from. But my own lived culture now is, I feel like I have multiple cultures because I spend so much time in different minority, let's say, religious establishments, from mosques, synagogues, temples, Asian women's projects, African Caribbean centers. So my networks are huge. So I'm very privileged that way. But your own, and every one of you will have different networks. Some of you may sort of volunteer in mosques or churches, etc. But you'll have lots and lots of things that you do that you may not bring to work or talk about at work. And I've still got friends that won't talk about going to Asian weddings on a Monday morning to their white colleagues because they don't think they're interested, or the last time they spoke to them about something like that, they turned their nose up or turned away. And these things still happen. We think it doesn't. So yeah, your historical culture is also really important. The more you engage with your historical culture, the more you're able to, to create what I call an anchor, something that holds you, something that makes you feel good about where you come from. So for example, I know that all of those different countries are trying to conquer Yemen, but it's still standing, and it's still, it's still a phenomenal country. And I take huge, not just satisfaction, but pride in that. And I think about, if they can survive, anybody can. So, these are just different aspects of our culture that we need to be aware of and then do something about. So how much do you know about your own cultural history? And again, it doesn't matter which country you come from, even the UK. I mean, the UK has got so much, if you're born here to white parents, the UK has got so much history. I doubt if there's anybody living in the UK who, whose ancestors were 100% English, Irish, Scottish, or Welsh. It's incredible, the diversity in this country, and how many different countries try to dominate the UK. So we have a great deal from half of the audience so far. Do you feel that you can, in fact, so thinking of your cultural background, do you feel that your managers know how to get the best from you? Okay, half of you say yes. Which again is brilliant for those that do. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying every single manager in every organization holds people back, but the more they know about you, the better. So where does our unconscious bias come into it? And again, it's not just our unconscious bias, it's everybody's unconscious biases. So for me, a big part of moving forward is understanding our blind spots and our biases. So unconscious bias to me is quite simple. It's just our unconscious, our unintentional people preferences. And a lot of that is based on how much we know about individuals. It's about, if we know, let's say, if we've worked with John for 4 years and we know him really well, and we go down the pub with him, we know his family, etc., etc. And this is as a line manager making the decision. And then we've got Mohammed, who has been with us for 10 years, hasn't really progressed. We know very little about Mohammed. We know that he's good at his job, but we really, but that's it. We know that he's good at what he does, but we have no idea of what else he's good at, what else he's done in the past, or anything else. Then we're going to bias John over Mohammed purely because we know so much more about John than we know about Mohammed. And also there will be stereotypes attached to Mohammed that may not be attached to John, based on his ethnicity, his religion, etc. This happens. But this is about how much we know about people. And, we all have blind spots. We all have biases. And one thing I want you to take, and I know the slides will be shared with you, but how much more can you, share with your leaders or with your managers or with other people so that they can bring you in, so that they can help you? And for anybody that's aware of Johari's window, it's a brilliant, very simple tool that you can use to share insights, but also to get feedback. And as I say, feedback is phenomenal. So you've got in Johari's window, you've got, if we just go down the left, you've got what's known to others and known to yourself. So that's the open area. Everybody knows, which is great because people can make decisions based on what you know and what they know. And then if you move across, you've got what's known to others, but not known to you. For example, you might think that you are crap at presentations. However, your manager thinks you're brilliant, but you've never really asked your manager, so you don't know. And you're trundling along doing presentations and being terrified every time you start a presentation, thinking, well, I haven't got the right information in here. How do I come across? Because we're not very good at seeking feedback. So that becomes a blind spot. You think you're crap, your manager, knows that you're pretty good, but you don't know. So how do you find out feedback? You ask questions. So, what's known to others but not known to you, you need to actually start asking more questions and getting more feedback so that open area becomes bigger and reduces that blind spot area. Then there's what's known to others, or sorry, what's known to you and not known to others. There may be so much about you as an individual, the work that you do, the work that you've done in the past, the work that you may be doing outside of work, or work that you've, a hobby or an interest that your managers know nothing about. It's really important that you find ways of increasing their knowledge, even if it's just by updating your LinkedIn so that they know. And then the fourth area is what's known to, what is not known to yourself and not known to others. And that's really development. That's all the things that you could be doing that you need to plan to do. And I always say to individuals, think about a 5-year plan. So I will share the slides with you, but I've just got a couple of questions. What can the leadership team do to drive cultural intelligence in your organization? We talk about vulnerabilities, and one of the things that we did with Rolls-Royce a few years ago was worked with their chief exec, their managing director, and a number of vice presidents. And we literally did a webinar, and they talked about their vulnerabilities. They talked about, one of them being having, mental health fatigue, huge challenges for 20 odd years, never talked about it until recently. Somebody talked about coming out as gay. Somebody talked about other health issues that they had. One talked about being a mother of 6 kids and, never starting work before 9 and never finishing after 5. And that really started to open up the organization, but showing those vulnerabilities and showing that, giving permission to things is so important. So become more aware and share life experience, dialogue, increased training, more mentors and at senior level, open conversations, self-disclosure. There's loads and loads of things. But what I want to do, what are you going to do to increase your awareness of cultural intelligence? And then I'll finish on a video for you. So what are you doing to increase your awareness of cultural intelligence? And some of the feedback here is share my own experience, learn from others, ask questions, listen, attend workshops, and engage. Absolutely. And there's so much more, and more of it we will get into later. But I do want to share this video.
You know that little voice in your head? The one that tells you to ignore a tasteless joke.
The one that tells you to keep quiet when a client makes a racist comment.
The little voice that tells you you're not smart enough because English isn't your first language.
Or that it's okay to judge someone for leaving early because they have family commitments.
The one that tells you not to say anything when others are being reduced to stereotypes.
Or that it's not a big deal when everyone's opinion isn't considered.
You may think you're the only one that hears that voice, but that voice also speaks to other people. It says,
You're different.
You're an outsider.
You lack commitment.
Your opinion doesn't matter.
instead of listening to that little voice, you need to find yours and make it heard. It's time for all of us to speak up. Because when we change the dialogue, we can change our world.
Rob, over to you.
Wow. We've got about 7 minutes till our break. Let me be amongst the first to say thank you to everyone for bearing with. We got that small technical bit there on some of Gamiel's slides, but I think the video worked. Certainly the sound came through, and intermittently we had the visuals. It's called That Little Voice. I'm sure we can provide the link for that afterwards if people want to revisit that. So Gamiel, we got time for a couple of quick questions before a break. Are you all right for that?
Absolutely.
All right, let's turn to them, because I saw a couple in there, really interesting questions as well. Let's start with this one, Gamiel. Thank you so much, by the way, for the session. The anonymous questioner poses this in terms of cultural competency, which I know is slightly different. It's not the same as cultural intelligence, but let's see if the question is highlighting that. Because the question is, would it be fair to assume that BAME staff, Black, Asian, minority ethnic staff, would be a lot more culturally competent compared to white people, especially in the civil service? Is that a fair assumption to make?
So are we comparing the civil service to other organizations?
No, I think the question is saying within the civil service. So comparing the BAME member of staff, the Black or the Asian or the minority ethnic member of staff, comparing them to their fellow civil servant white colleague. Would the BAME member of staff, the Black, Asian, minority ethnic member of staff, would it be fair to assume that they would be more culturally competent than the white person, all within the civil service?
Well, if we look at cultural competency from the perspective of understanding ourselves as well as understanding others, then, you know, I'd say one of the challenges that we have is not understanding ourselves enough in order to be able to navigate around systems that exist that are, let's say, a lot of our white colleagues will not have to navigate round. So they don't have that issue or that challenge of having to navigate the same way that we do. So some people are more culturally, particularly from ethnic minority backgrounds, some are more culturally competent than others. But you gave us a story, Rob, a number of years ago at one of the events, and that was around your experience. And I think you said it was something like it took you 10 years to realize that, you know, so many people that you'd recruited, you know, who were white, had actually progressed way above you. But that took you 10 years to actually realize that was happening.
Yeah, that's true.
So, you know, what is it within ourselves that stop us recognizing that, you know, there's lots going on around us, but we don't see it, or we were blind to it, or we put our own barriers to it, or we think it's our fault that things aren't happening. So we may be culturally competent in terms of how much we know about our cultural background, but in terms of, you know, knowing how to apply things to an organization is different. Yeah. Great response. Thank you, Gamiel. I think it picks up the point that was being made in the question. If it doesn't, please do come back to us. Yeah, please. It's still with us and with us after the break as well. But Rob, have you shared that experience? I have shared that experience, absolutely. And, you know, very, very quickly to say that in a 38-year career, for the first decade, I was doing my utmost to do what I felt was appropriate to offer my best, to, where necessary, outperform others if I was in competition with them for promotion, for example. That happened 2 or 3 times within that 10-year stretch. But the realization that Gamiel's referring to, colleagues, is my realization that individuals I had helped, coached, supported, mentored, even before mentoring was in currency, were landing jobs they were going for, some of them the same jobs I was applying for, and I wasn't. And it took me 10 years to realize that what seemed to be occurring was that my voice wasn't necessarily being heard in the way I thought it was or wanted it to be. And also that there was no one like me who was progressing at the rate of my white friends, a number of whom I have across the civil service.
So something was going on, and I didn't wake up to that until 10 years in. I didn't wake up to that the color of my skin could be, for some people, something they would push back against and would not have welcomed in their team. And it wasn't until further examples got added to that on my experience that I woke up to it. And once I woke up to it, well, like all revelations, once you realize it, it won't let you go. Even if you try and let it go, it won't let you go. A revelation does stick with you eternally. Thanks for that, Gamiel. Thanks for that opportunity. We've got another question. Let's squeeze it in before we take a quick break. Question regarding authentic self.
Yes.
As a Muslim, this person asking the question, as a Muslim, I've noticed the low number of people, especially from the Muslim networks. We do have the Muslim network represented later on today, folks, in the shape and form of Nuzhat Ali. But as especially from the Muslim networks, wanting to get involved with promoting Islamophobia. So a low number wanting to get involved with promoting Islamophobia, Gamiel.
Promoting Islamophobia? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, low number wanting to get involved with promoting Awareness Month, with promoting Islamophobia Awareness Month in the civil service. I suspect this is because they are scared of touching the nerves of colleagues that might be Islamophobic. There's no question mark there, but the anonymous attendee might want to come back. But what's your response to that? Is that your experience, that some people keep their head below the parapet? Absolutely.
And again, what people don't realize, and particularly our white colleagues, they don't realize that, and I'm a fellow Muslim, so, you know, we experience Islamophobia every single day from so many different aspects, so many different, you know, corners that we have to try and navigate around that. And people won't step forward because of that, because they've been hammered before, or because they've said something before, and suddenly, you know, they're seen as a troublemaker. And that's the thing. I'm hoping that we're moving out of that phase because of the increasing awareness and the increasing, you know, awareness of our white counterparts to actually, you know, want to read more, want to learn more. And that's one thing that's happened over the last 2 years, or since Black Lives Matters. Everybody wants to be better educated. But, you know, this opens up another challenge, and that is around Black Lives Matter, because a lot of Muslims don't feel part of Black Lives Matters, or a lot of Asian Muslims don't feel part of Black Lives Matters. Yeah. So, you know, again, there's so much, but the key is, we need to be educating and making sure that, you know, everybody in our organizations know the good stuff that's coming out of Islam, and not just the stuff that they've stereotyped or that they hear in the press. Yeah. And, you know, and we need to step forward, but we need to find a way of encouraging our colleagues, our brothers and sisters to actually do that in comfort.
Yeah, absolutely.